This is the other panel.
Oh, yeah.
Charles, you like to do the honor? Oh, I thought you were kicking us off. You good? No, I got it.
You're my pro, bro.
Pro bro? Like Property Brothers. Property Brothers. Charles, thank you. It's the director of the track. I'll mention him in a minute again. Come on in if you want to come in. No? All right. So, this is Blerds Unite. All right, first off, let's get this out the way. It's Sunday. I've been here since Wednesday. I was at some concerts. They got robots playing music and stuff. I was yelling and screaming. So I apologize if I sound like 13. This is the Blerds Unite panel brought to you by the Digital Media Track, which is a big deal, I want to say, because the Digital Media Track is open to... Can you close the door? I'm sorry. Open to all sorts of panel submissions. We're going to talk about that in a minute. DragonCon does have a charity this year. It's the American Heart Association. DragonCon will match up to $800,000 for everything you can give. I know, especially on Sunday at DragonCon, money's tight, but whatever you can give, text AHA 2019 to 44321. And again, DragonCon will match up to $100K. So, with that, thank you, Scott. This is the Blerds Unite panel. And I want to open up off the jump by saying the reason this panel existed is because somebody said, hey, I have an idea. And that person happened to be Marrista, who I'll introduce in a minute. But she said, I have an idea. I want to do this panel. And she wrote DragonCon and said, here's my idea. Here's the shows I work on. Here's what I want to do. And she took that first step. And now we're all here because she took the first step. So before we even get started, Marrista, thank you.
Thanks for showing up. I'm glad I don't have an empty room.
Marissa's a little nervous, but you have nothing to be nervous about. You see, like I said, you had an idea. Everyone came because you made that happen. So without further ado, I'm sorry, introductions. My name is Tony P. Henderson, podcaster, moderator of this such. To my right, Nuru, I don't know your last name. I've never called you by your last name.
It's fine. Ain't gonna say it either. No, I'm kidding. My name is Nuru Agbaje. In case you're wondering, the name is from Nigeria. So I am a legit Nigerian prince. I will say that right now. Having said that, if you guys get like emails you don't understand, forward them to me. I will happily look into those for you, let you know if it's legit. Just take my cut. We good? All right. I happen to be a member of two groups. The first of those being the Nerds from Work, which is how I came in touch with the great Charles McFall, the rock god of pod, and also Tony P. Henderson here. And that group is more of a mixture. There's a bunch of white boys with Asian heritage, and myself being the token black dude, I guess. And I
mean, that's true though. It's not even a joke.
It's not even a joke, like for real. It's the thing. But I'm also a member of a group called the Niger Nerds, which is an offshoot of an initiative to try to highlight African stories in media, specifically actual those Africans who are beginning to excel globally in so many different media, gaming, movies, TV, entertainment, and all of that. So we just kind of got started last year. I've been running for a year. It's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to meeting many of you one-on-one and making friends.
Well, thank you, Nuru. Marrista.
Hi, I'm Marrista. I'm from the Coco Chronicles. As he said, I'm the one who pitched this panel. I also work with Black Nerd Problems, writing articles. Coco Chronicles, we had a podcast. We're planning on getting it restarted again and putting out new material. Our digital media also extends into YouTube.
Let me ask you guys, who was here for the Black Journalism panel we did on Friday? Anyone? I know some of y'all were here. I was going to say, I'm looking at you. I know you were here. And I just want to say that was another, that was a gentleman by the name of Johnny D. Had an idea as well and said, I have this idea for a panel. He took the first step. And a lot of people will say, DragonCon ain't going to take that. DragonCon doesn't want to hear about Blurred View. But if you put it out there, and at least, they may not accept it, but if you have ideas, at least put them out there, you get the ball rolling. So this one is, I've been looking forward to this because what is a blurred,
Yeah.
And we were having a little sidebar before we even got started. And myself, my mother's actually Italian. My dad's black, my mom's Italian. So my blurred view is a little bit different from your blurred view. And then you got Nigerian blurred view, which I have no idea what that looks like. So Marrista, and this is your second panel you've done at DragonCon?
Yes.
So I know you're a little nervous. It's all right. But you're getting, this is how you get started.
Yeah.
So what is your, I said blurred view. I told you to correct me.
Well, I didn't mind because you were talking about Johnny's panel.
Ah, yes.
So that's why I didn't say anything.
So Johnny, who did the journalism panel, has a show called The Blurred View. But this is different. This is Blerds getting together, uniting.
Yes.
Blerds Unite.
Yes.
So when someone says blurred, what does that mean to you? What does that look like?
For me personally, it means someone who obviously you're of either island African descent, you're black, that's what the BL in blurred stands for, obviously, and nerd, so you're into like anime, movies, sci-fi, things that maybe, for me personally, I got outcasted in elementary school for liking Harry Potter, and I didn't realize then that I was a nerd, but stuff like that. If you're into something that maybe you've been outcasted for, it doesn't even have to be TV, movies. It could be you're a man and you knit, and that's what you stand for. Like, you just knit. You know everything about knitting, and people think you're weird for it. You're a blurred.
I understand that as well. I was in the comics and things, but when you said Harry Potter in what, high school? Is that what you just said?
In
elementary school. I can't relate to that struggle, but it's the same thing. When I was younger, I had my like X-Men books and stuff, and that's not what black kids at the time did, or so I thought. Blurs were always out there, but I think there was smaller pockets, and there wasn't this, and there wasn't the convention. So you really had to. You all had that one friend. If you're blurred, you had that one other blurred friend that knew what you were talking about. So before I ask Nuru his question, I forgot to mention, every panel I do, it is not about us talking at y'all. And the other panelists is all of you. So this is a conversation. It's not, we're not the only ones that have been blurred. We want to hear from you guys. So if you have questions, comments, anything you want to say, we have this really cool microphone. It's basically a microphone and a Nerf football. So that's it.
There it goes. Yeah, I've been on Nerd for almost 50 years now.
Wow.
So, yeah, I was the only blurred in a southern rural town, and I didn't ever have another blurred around me. So, yeah.
And I believe it, man. It's heck. Look, let's be honest. There's a lot of towns. I mean, that was a little off, but we got it. There's a lot of towns you might be the only black person. And then now you're looking at, finding that one other blurred or I'll be honest, even another nerd that kind of likes, I don't care what you look like, I just want to talk about the comics. Even that's hard to find for me. Now I feel like it's easier with these awesome conventions and things.
If you're alone, you can be the man from
So questions, comments, raise your hand. We'll throw you the catch box. Nuru, what was it like for you, again, especially growing up in Nigeria? Now, all right, I know you weren't the only black person, but being a blurred, how was that, if that was the case?
Well, I'll be very honest with you guys. The perspective from growing up I'm going to speak largely about Africa as a whole, but also narrow it down to Nigeria. If you like this stuff, you like this stuff. It was that simple. And there was never a sense of, because as far as you were concerned, all of it was alien to you, okay? White countries, cities, locations, places represented in fiction, none of it was anywhere you knew. So it was all strange. So finding other guys who loved this, like I came across my first comic, my first exposure to actual sequential art comic books was the Justice League run in the 80s, Justice League of America, which was comedic, humorous, amazing. It blew my mind. My dad went one day with me, and we took a look at some comic books. We went to this tennis club, and he took a look at some of these comic books, and I said, those are great. He goes, you want those? I go, yeah. A couple days later, I come home from school, and there's a stack of comic books this high. Whoa. And I'm like, okay. And I dig in, and I just relate to so many of these stories. It was entertaining. It was fun. I didn't necessarily see myself in them, but that started to change later on when I started to come across people like, Black Lightning in the Justice League comic books, and started thinking, okay, that's interesting. And here's the reason why. In Nigeria, for better or worse, most of us grow up with a sense of being the majority. You're not the minority, which sometimes gives you a sort of an arrogance, which I'm ready to bet some of you may have encountered if you've run into Nigerians. I apologize. But the point being, you don't ever look at yourself as less. You just think, I'm as good as the next whoever you are. So that translates into your love for this art form and these media. And until you start seeing others of the same skin, that's when we begin to realize, hey, there isn't enough about us in there. And there began to be an I guess you could call it a rising or an uprising of art and people beginning to go into that media in Nigeria as well. Now, granted, I'm not going to take too long with this, but
go on. It's interesting.
There has been a long history of artists going back to the 50s and 60s, if you look into it, from Africa, sequential art, comic books, and stuff like that. Also, one of my first experiences reading comic books from the newspapers, a guy called Captain Africa, and written by a man called Andy Ackman. And it was a pretty good stuff. It was basically a ripoff of Superman, but what did I care, But it was entertaining, it was fun, I could relate to that. Eventually, he kind of changed some of it to reflect a little bit more in terms of African values and, mysticism, in terms of the origins of his powers and stuff like that. But my point being, there's always been a good history to this stuff. You always find it's always been there. Now, coming to America has opened my eyes a great deal. I have met so many wonderful people who talk about the pain of not seeing themselves represented and how it affected them. And it was a lot deeper than you would find someone like me felt, because I just felt, hey, I don't live in New York, I don't see myself, it doesn't matter. But coming here and seeing and realizing, looking back over even the stuff I loved, and realizing just how blatant it was to literally tell stories on streets that y'all walk and nobody looks like you in these books, you begin to realize how important representation is. That's why stuff like this is important. I look out and I see all of you, and this is a very comforting room for me right now. Very comforting. I'm gonna just stop there because I could just keep going.
Nuru, that was awesome, man. We got questions. Speaking of, we got a couple questions. Luke Cage, and then who's here? Hey, Charles, can you run the mic for me? Do you mind? Absolutely. Thank you very much. Luke Cage first. All right.
Here we go. Throwing the mic.
Come on, Charles. Oh, no, see, no, come on. Let me say.
I did.
Hands.
I was trying.
No. That pass was on point. And then my man, I got this with one hand, dog.
It's not his fault. Wrong shape.
I'm just gonna Odell Beckham this. I got this.
This is cool.
Hey man, thank you. What's up?
But to add to the point that you just made, I'm glad I'm here. I was just at another convention. I'm not gonna put it out there, because I don't know how sensitive it may be. But I was just at another convention not too long ago. Brought up the same thing that you just said about representation in video games and other things of that nature. Excuse me. So I went into, the Dragon Ball Z's, the Naruto's, a lot of these shows that we glorify, that I still enjoy. But there is a huge lack of representation when you look at Gundam, all these shows, I enjoy them, but in terms of what anime is and what Asians put out there, they do not, from what I see, respect us. And again, it's reflected in everything that Dragon Con has to do with, and everything that has to do with, like I said, anime, cartoons. Our representation is seriously lacking, and I'm tired of it. I don't. We had Luke Cage, we had Black Lightning, we had Black Panther, and what I'm in fear of is that they're just treating it as a phase, and that it's just a quick money grab just for the last couple of years, and that we'll see it disappear over the next few years, just because they were like, all right, people do like this stuff, we'll get the money out of it now, and then we'll phase it out. And I'm praying that does not happen.
I think that's a very valid concern, because I mean, for lack of a better term, like it got hot for a bit. Like, yo, all these, black heroes are hot. Black Panther made billions of dollars, and yes, people just look at the dollars, the marketing. So I think the test will be next year, year after, when we're back here having this conversation again. What else is out there? And for me, I don't need everything to be, I just want a little representation, just a little bit. To Nuru's point, you got Spider-Man lives in New York. If you, I don't mean it's funny, if you live in Nigeria, you don't know what New York looks like. Yeah. And he had a question up, hey, Charles, next time up front, he had a question, the white shirt. No worries. No, next time. We got you. If you don't know what New York looks like, New York does not look like all white people walking around.
How was I to know?
Exactly. But when you're in New York, every single shade. New York is the epitome, Question or comment, orange shirt, and then white shirt next.
Okay, one of the things I was saying, which is interesting, even as the conversation goes, a lot of the part of me feeling like, let's say, a blerd is stuff I don't get to tell black people.
Yes.
Because black people, when they hear that this is what you do, this is what you're into, oh, you're white, aren't you?
Right.
You were born white guy. So one of the things is, as we continue to have these conversations, even to what we're saying, first of all, we consider where it comes from. But the other thing is, what's going to stick around is what money is paying for.
Yes.
So
You're
we
right.
can't say this is what we want to see, but then bootleg it or not support it when it comes out. So we don't have to worry about anything going away as long as it's bringing money. But then that's across the board. A lot of times if it's not making money, so as we're having these conversations, as we're thinking about them, we got to support these kinds of panels. We've got to support those kind of programmings when they come out, and that's how you keep stuff going around.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
But like I said, for me, part of it was like, it's not even, we're not represented. It's like, okay, I'm not going to tell y'all that yet.
Yeah.
Because y'all might look at me funny.
There's definitely a pressure in the African American community, that when you're into stuff, look, like I said, I'm 40, so when I was in high school, this dude who I since worked it out with used to call me Archie. Because I was a white nerd. Oh, Archie. I was like, first off, how you know about Archie, dog? Like,
he's in the closet.
But you're right. And I personally I wouldn't say just support everything because it's black created, but do show the love for the stuff that you like and do go to the theater. Don't bootleg it, and either go or show love or look, this isn't a plug. People that put these panels together, rate the panels. Yeah. You can do that in the app. You just got to show, I liked it, I didn't like it. Let people know you were there. Right. So, question in the white. Sorry we missed you.
Good.
Or comment.
There's a couple things. First thing, I've been coming to Dragon Con since the beginning, so like 88, 89. And I've been watching the evolution. First thing first, this wasn't a thing before, which it actually makes me happy now. And I've seen a shift over time. When I was a kid, so I'm 50. So where I grew up at, my whole apartment complex was a bunch of Blerds. We did comic books.
Dude, where'd
we
you
did
grow up at?
Decatur, actually.
Nice.
But we also did the regular stuff. Folks like to say, nerds don't play sports. That ain't true. We were into football just as much. We were into comic books and stuff, right? My first comic book I ever read was Avengers. And this older kid named Javaris or something like that. I seen him reading the comic because, hey, what's that? He said, it's a comic book. It's like, this is what's on TV, but it's in a book form. And I was like, he let me look at it and stuff. I was like, where'd you get this from? It was like 7-Eleven. I was like, I don't have any money. He was like, I don't have any money either. I stole it, And he actually showed me how to shoplift the comic books. And I did that for like 2 issues, but then I got hooked. Now, mind you, I didn't know how to read them. So I didn't understand how the panels went. Mm-hmm. So I'm reading it upside down, sideways. I'm just, going through it and stuff. But I got addicted to it. So it got to the point where I started saving up a little money and I started buying them. And I've been collecting since then. Well, most of the kids in my hood did the same thing. But then as we got older and we got out of high school, a lot of them went away from it. I never did. If you walk into my room right now, it looks like the Marrista Mark. And I'm proud of that. But what I've seen is, at my job, I work with a lot of younger people, and I mess with them, call them millennials and all of this other stuff, but they're cool as hell because a lot of them are Blerds. They're in the anime. They're in more anime than I've ever been in. They're running around talking about Naruto and whoever, all these other people. I'm not there. But it makes me feel good that there's, they're not filling out the stereotype a lot of times. And he made a comment about being in the closet. There's a whole bunch of Blerds that just won't call themselves Blerds, or don't want to, say that they rock with Naruto or I don't know, Pokemon or whatever's out there. But I think this is cool. This panel, seeing every year, seeing the amount of blacks coming out to Dragon Con or people of color coming to Dragon Con, it's amazing to me. And it's cool too how Dragon Con is taking in all of this diversity, man. Because nerds are smart people. I don't want to be a dummy. It's cool. I think y'all should be proud of yourselves. It's a dope place a dope mentality and a place to be. So,
Thank you, man. Thank you for sharing that. We have a bunch of questions. Charles, you gotta get to work.
Yeah, 1 second, if you don't mind.
Tell me.
Can I jump on what he said just
Please,
a little
Nuru.
bit? One of the more interesting things for me is the background stories, because everybody took a different path to get here. Everybody took a different path to get here. I happened to grow up middle class in Nigeria, which meant I didn't have to steal my comic books. But I probably would have if I had a chance. The point being, passion. Your passion creates the path for you to get to where you need to go. And you'll find, and we were talking about this just now, that so many different people have different paths to get there. And also, even when they get there, different expressions of that passion. Some people are they're gonna cosplay. Others are gonna just sit down and observe and appreciate. Others are gonna buy a bucket load of stuff. Like, I saw some guys back, who had, every time I show up, I see stuff from established, or rather more established, black artists. I'll buy their stuff. If I see stuff from guys who aren't as established, I'll buy it too. Take a look at it. This is not great, but hey, you got my money, man. I'll give you that support. The point being, sometimes, it's about creating an environment where that no matter what you actually are, you encourage others to eventually demonstrate that they really do support this. And that also leads to one other thing, which is taking hold of the medium and making it your own. Doing stuff like what the late, great Dwayne McDuffie did, which is create your own stories. Tell the stories you want to tell. And I got to tell you, by the way, there's no reason why Static Shock isn't more popular than he is right now. It's unfortunate. I really think his death it cost us in a large way. Because there's so much he was involved in, and you think about the fact that his not being there kind of killed the fire of that. Because Static Shock really was Miles Morales before we had Miles Morales. That's the truth.
One thing I'll point on real quick, they said a lot of us here are Blerds, but it's not just black people stuff. Runs the gamut. Whoever you are, any person of color, minority, and we had a lot of white people in the black journalism panel. People feel their own way for their own reasons. So my takeaway, I don't want it to be, it's just black. It's all people of color. I'm mixed. I hope in the next 20 years you don't even know what's what anymore, quite frankly. So just support. But your question or comment, I'm sorry.
Kind of two-part on this.
Yeah.
First of all, I love everybody in here because y'all are so freaking awesome. Like, this is just so cool. So my comment was to piggyback off of you. I don't know how many people have actually been to Japan, like actually gone, right?
Marrista's been, yeah.
Yes, and when you go there, the lack of representation of African American people is there, and they still don't get it. Like you said, they still don't get it. So the first big comment I want to say is that telling our story is so imperative. is so necessary because the media that they see over there in other countries is negative of us and very confusing of what it is to be black or African or Nigerian or biracial. They really don't understand it because, you know, they get confused. Like when I was there, you know, I'm African American. And they were like, oh, you're African. Oh, you're from Africa. It's like, no, I'm from America, you know, and it doesn't click. So biggest thing I wanted to say is we have to tell our stories. We have to go out there in the world and not be afraid of it because a lot of African Americans and other people of culture tend to be scared to go out there and tell their story because they're afraid of the lashback that they might get from telling their stories. And it's necessary because that's the only way that people are going to learn. Oh, this is what you stand for. Oh, this is what that means. Oh, this is what that's about. You know what I mean? So definitely anybody in here, go and tell your story. I don't care if you make a 5-part comic. Make that 5-part comic, okay? And don't stop, you know what I mean? My second thing is actually a general question to anybody who want to answer this. How are y'all dealing with like the new insurgent of like African American people that have downed you from being a nerd and now all of a sudden they like Dragon Ball Z, they seen all of Naruto, just Wakanda forever, like for the love of Christ. How are y'all dealing with that? Because
I personally don't
like. I'm trying, and it's so hard. I don't know how to take it. I'm really like. I'm like. I just need to go to some nerds.
when those people try to come to you, knowing that they really weren't there, I don't even give them the time of day hardly because it's like I know you, and you're putting on a mask. As soon as you know Black Panther is done with, or it's not mainstream. Yeah, you like Black Panther, but do you watch, you know, little stuff like Michiko and Hatshin? It's
Static Shock.
Right, Static Shock. Do you watch, there's a new one on Netflix called Cannon Busters.
Oh, yeah, that's dope.
So, yeah, you like this mainstream stuff, but I know that you're only in it because you're doing it because you think it's cool. It's cool to be a nerd presently.
I know for me, it hit me, you know, maybe a few years ago, there was a football player had like DBZ cleats or something, and it blew my mind. I'm like, yo, that dude's like maybe 19, 20, making millions of dollars, repping, and a black dude repping Dragon Ball Z. And so that's when it hit me, like, okay, this is kind of here now. Yeah. But for me, I try my best, although I'm with you sometimes, to still invite them in. You know, like, it took you a while to get here. You kind of were a little funky about it, but you're here now. Yeah.
We got a few people want to make comments, but I want to say real quick. That's one of the funniest things for me, especially as an actual African Nigerian, because then you get people come up in your face, be like, "Wakanda forever," and then they try to, you know, they try to jump in and try to say, therefore they now understand. You know, I'm like, you don't, but hey. But I'll tell you this much. For me, my reaction to it, I'll be very straight up. It depends on the day. Like, it depends on the Tuesday. You might catch me on the Tuesday, and I'll be petty as hell. You might catch me the very next day, and I have time. I will educate you. I'll sit down. We start talking. I start giving you pointers and other things to go look at. You know, I might even take the time to email you some stuff to look at. But the point is, it depends on the day, and that's just it. Because listen. I'm going to take the high ground, though, and that is to say we do need to grab onto this wave. Simple. I never thought one day I'd come into a room, sit down, and there's a brother sitting like Killmonger right there. Like, that's important.
At,
you know what I'm saying?
What is it?
All Might.
All Might. I almost said All Strong. You know. I'm
so,
with you. I don't know.
In as much as the purpose of it was definitely a cash grab to make money, and it worked, I guess, you know, also a token way of saying, yeah, we're going to tell your stories too. Thank you. But we still need to grab hold of this and use that leverage. Like, check out Michael B. Jordan. I like what he's doing in terms of saying, okay, I actually have a passion for this stuff. And now he's working with, I think it's the Rooster Teeth crew, and they're coming up with, they got a show called Genlock. So that sort of thing is him grabbing hold of that and spinning it off with some of the actual cash and leverage and influence into something positive. And that doesn't have to, you don't have to have $1 million to do that. Keep telling those stories and pushing and doing what you do at your level, and also spread the word.
I keep hammering this, and you're going to hear it 3 more times before this panel's up. Like, Marrista had the idea for this panel, and no, she's not Michael B. Jordan. No. But look at how many people are in this room. You're right, not yet. Look at how many people are in this room because she was sitting at her house and had an idea. Yo, we need to talk about this, and the room's packed. Sorry, Killmonger, man. We've been rambling.
You're good. You're good. Beautiful. Everybody's beautiful out here. Glad this could come together because I relate to everybody's story, basically. Just growing up, you're seen as a nerd, but like I was like the down low nerd. So I was like, I was smart and I was black, but I went to a majority white school. So I got ostracized by the black people because I was too smart. And then I didn't relate to the white people because that's all my classes I was in. So it was kind of a weird space. I felt like an outcast for most of my time until I actually got to college. And then I finally met people who are like me and weren't, scared to talk about, being in the Dragon Ball Z, being in kind of the anime, being in talking about, different types. So it was good. And then now, like you were talking about the new wave. The new wave? Yeah. I just basically go like this. They hate us because they ain't us. That's all I think. Every time I see somebody like, wait, you used to pick on people for playing Yu-Gi-Oh cards and like being into that kind of stuff. And now you're like, oh yeah, I'm into all this. I'm like, nah. But that's all I have to say.
No, thank you. Right behind you. We're going to go right behind you. We're going to go orange shirt. We're going to go hat and shades.
Okay.
Someone's going to have to make that pass, but I got faith in you.
To keep this a little shorter, also realizing that hesitancy from the rest of the community to be welcoming is also because nerddom has always been seen as a very white space. And so us entering that space, like when Beyonce was Storm, I don't know if anybody remembers this because it made me very upset. She dressed as Storm, and even though Storm is a black character, they're like, she's pretending to be a nerd, as if because she is black, she cannot be a nerd. So understanding that we're talking about the new wave, oh, you only watch Dragon Ball Z and Naruto, you don't really watch anime, which I mean, you don't really watch anime. Sorry, sweetie. There's so much other things you can watch. Let's get started. You need to watch Tokyo Ghoul. But understanding that we should be more welcoming of the new wave because the more people we have, the more interest people have and are generating, the more money they're going to put into it, the more representation we can create. We're giving them we have the demand. They weren't producing anything, not only because there's no demand, there's this whole dissertation on why white people will not create fantasy universes with black people. It's because they're looking at their scope. We were talking about our blurred view, you're thinking about your scope. We're not part of their scope. So the more we talk about it, the more bodies we have, the more conversation we're generating like this, the more the demand is seen. The more the demand is seen, the more supply will come.
Yes, agree, 100%. Can you make the pass to orange shirt? Oh, Charles, you're going to be all right.
Very uncoordinated.
You're the cutoff. Boom. Oh, man, there's a different dude in an orange shirt. There's too many orange shirts. Oh, it's red.
His was red.
All right, orange to red to hat and shades.
I don't see color, Tony.
Somebody had to say it.
Good answer.
Nice.
What did I walk in? Holding out what happened?
No.
Oh, boy.
Just to kind of speak to your question, one of the things I've always kind of tried to explain when I'm trying to tell people why I like anime is because I think, especially in the United States, there's a very myopic view of what animation is. We've got Simpsons, we've got Tom and Jerry, we've got a very limited scope. And when I'm explaining to them, anime goes from G to triple X. Anything that you want anything that we would do as a normal program here,
and then some.
They will actually animate it there, and their animation there will run as much prime time as our live shows. So to me, I don't necessarily see it as now you're trying to jump in. To me, it's like an awakening. You finally understand a little bit more than you did before. It's possible that you were actually starting to grow a little bit. You're moving out of the space of Tom and Jerry Simpsons are my options to understanding where you've actually watched stuff. And I've recommended stuff to people, they've watched it, and they're like, oh man, I like this stuff. So for me, it's not necessarily like always, now I'm trying to be down. It's kind of more so like, oh, now I'm starting to understand something I didn't understand yesterday.
Cool.
Red shirt. And I'll add, what I don't want to see, and this is just me talking, I don't want the Blerd community to become gatekeepers. You know, I personally, I love the whole Dragon Con nerd community, so I don't want there to be a line drawn. We had enough of that, you know. So here in this con, here in Dragon Con nerd community, I don't want to see lines and gates and, you know.
I hate that, I gotta say, because the reason I'm scared of that is because you just never know who you're keeping out. You could be keeping out the next great visionary that the community needs. You could be keeping out the one person who could make a difference, who could blow stuff up and just tell a story in ways you just never could. You just never know. So I don't feel we have the right to lock anybody out or even question anybody else getting in. If you want to get in, get in. I'll do my best to educate you because, you know, sometimes your ignorance is showing. That's not a bad thing. It just means I see it and let me help you.
Yes.
All right?
And more to that point also, I'm sure everyone in this room has been gate-kept from something, has been blocked from something, separated from something. So while I may not personally deal with the new wave as heavy, to be honest, because it hasn't hit me as much, I'm not gonna tell someone who's like trying to come at me with it, oh, don't talk to me. I'm like, okay, well, if you actually want to have a discussion, we'll do this. Because I've been left out before. Everyone's been left out of something before, and that's not right.
Two wrongs don't make a right. So, red shirt.
But 3 lefts do. Anyway, I was going to relate the story of isolation. I've been a Blerd all my life, literally. And I've been isolated and almost ostracized, even within my own family. I don't know if anybody else has had that experience. Add to that, living in the rural South. I didn't even have a comic store to go to steal a comic from.
Even if you wanted to.
So living in a rural southern town, majority white people, it wasn't really a thing to me. They were saying, you don't feel strange being around all those white people? I said, no, they're people too. That doesn't matter to me. But when it got started with me really with Star Wars. And I didn't really relate to the characters. I mean, it was nice to see Lando Calrissian, but I was more interested in the droids. So I don't know how long I had to beg just to get R2-D2 and C-3PO, but I finally got them eventually. But it's that for me, that story is I've always been proud to let my geek flag fly. I don't care who worries about it. That doesn't matter to me. I'm not easily embarrassed. So. If somebody wants to say to me that, oh, that's white people stuff or something like that, I said, no, that's my stuff. If white people like it, that's fine. If they don't, that's fine too. That's just me. I don't really care about other people's opinions that way. If you're good with it, that's fine. If you're not, too bad.
Man, I love that. That's my stuff. I love that. All right. Thank you for your patience.
No problem. So since we all aging ourselves out here, I'm I'm 45, and I'm in the space I am in. I'm in IT, so yeah, it's kind of old, you know. The other thing is I have grown children, so I never thought it was a big deal because I really like Star Wars and we like Star Trek, and that's what we were in.
Our family was really into sci-fi as it was anyway, so we never had. I mean, they looked at us crazy because we had never watched Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Yeah, we got some
and we got looked at. I mean, this is our entire family is deeply into that kind of stuff.
It was like, we need to watch an episode right now to get you on board. So.
But so for us, we were really fortunate. But you know, also we grew up very poor, so we couldn't necessarily buy the comic books.
Neither could he.
And our parents, you know, stealing was not something we could do. So, but you know, I would say that as we've gotten older, and then she noticed that her son was really getting into anime and doing that kind of stuff, and he actually was our gate into going to cons because we were like, let's find you some other people who are into the same things.
you're in. So we started taking them to cons. They don't come with
Even
us anymore.
anymore.
It's just the two of us now. You know, so it's kind of funny that we talk about generations, but I think they were comfortable, you know, he was comfortable embracing things because we were comfortable embracing things. And so I think for us, it's just passing it down, you know, to the generations and saying, if that's what you like, you know, that's what you like, go ahead and we'll try to encourage that in you, you know. And it was nice for our parents, you know, they're like, now they look at us and they're like, y'all are just ridiculous. But, you know, she dressed as a Jedi and my dad was like, what did I start, you know, 40 years ago?
It's good parenting.
But, you know, for us, I think we were really fortunate is what I really want to say, because our family was always accepting with the sci-fi and that kind of stuff. And it's always nice. It's nice to be able to transfer that, you know, to her kids and have them enjoy those kind of things as well.
Definitely.
And
And
on
I-
that note, I will say, though, their dad, when I was like, well, we're going to take him to Comic Palooza because, you know, he really likes anime. Why are you doing that? Black folks don't do that. And I'm like, these black people do.
Yes. And that's the thing. And Charles, we're going to go way in the back. I think back row. I saw a hand. Yeah. And that's, raise your hand, back row, right there. Yeah, sorry. Stay up, stand up, stand up. And that's the thing, I think as a parent or even as just another adult, don't shut that down. Whatever it is. If it's sports, your kid's into sports, support that. If your kid's into anime, support that. And open those opportunities. Yeah.
So what are we reading other than comic books?
Ooh.
I'm a writer, so I'm out here peddling my books, trying to get some
What are some
trying to
of
get
the
some
titles
love.
of
glad
the
you
things you
brought
have?
that up.
What are your
What
books?
else are we reading? Because like I was that kid who was wandering around with the Lord of the Rings, and the last time I got in trouble for it, I dropped it on somebody's foot.
Hey, real quick, tell us about your books, and
Yeah.
I think Nuru has something to add. What are you writing? What do you have out there?
Let's see. My name is Alledria Hurt, ALLEDRIAHURT.com, or you can come get a business card.
Yeah, please.
So
I'll add real quick.
I brought a couple. I brought a couple hundred, so I might be able to get the whole room. We'll see. But
Only
I
a couple
write-
hundred for Dragon Con.
Only
you
a
need to
couple
bring
hundred, because I
thousands.
was like, there's no possible way I could need more than 500. I obviously underestimated exactly how many people there were going to be at this con. So I finished a high fantasy trilogy where I was just on a panel with Milton Davis for African inspirations in high fantasy. That was this morning at 10 o'clock, if y'all were awake. And
No, sorry.
no, that's okay, because a lot of folk were not awake. But we had a good turnout, so I was quite happy. But I write high fantasy. I write urban fantasy, which is my next panel. I'm in psychics and urban fantasy. I write thrillers, which is what I get for reading James Patterson too much. But yeah, I just want to know what are you guys reading? What are you loving? Because that way I know what I'm looking for.
Let me say this real quick. We usually hang out for a few minutes in the room, and then if other people come in, there's space out front. Make sure you hit everybody up. And guys, if you're interested, hit her up. So hang out for a minute. Don't run off if you have the time. Nuru, you had something to add to that.
Yeah, I did. I'm really glad you brought that up, because I was going to say, I was kind of looking at my watch to figure out what the right time would be to ask this question. How many of us here are actually creators? You're creators. You create something. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, one of the best things about places like this is you get to interact with other people, and you kind of have a captive audience. And I'm really proud of you for stepping up like that and pushing, your product, which is something you need to do sometimes. And let me kind of backpedal a little bit. I want to jump off of something. Meeting you two gentlemen, talking about, in your case, you were in the city, you got to steal a comic book. In your case, there's no place to steal them. There's always somebody else who has it worse than you, when you think about it. And I come from a part of the world where, honestly, comic books, I was privileged. I actually am privileged. I'm one of those guys who grew up, my family, my dad worked in the bank, my mom worked as an accountant somewhere, money to buy the comic books, and my dad bought the comic book, so it wasn't really the issue. Having said that, there's several other people where I'm from for whom that's a pipe dream. They don't even have any way they're ever going to come up with this stuff. Some of them, they will tell you the first comic they ever saw was being maybe a page used to wrap food, and they're like, "What is this?" You know, and they open up the food and read and go, "Whoa, this is good." How many of you heard about? I think recently it kind of trended. There's these kids who were making movies, the sci-fi
I
stuff.
saw that.
How many saw
wasn't
that?
sure if it was Nigeria, so I didn't want to bring it up.
Oh yeah, you saw that? There's these kids who were using a broken cell phone. Actually, it's a broken cell phone, screen crack cell phone, and some software to create sci-fi movies, shorts, and they have a YouTube channel and everything. Those guys, I was so proud of them. I actually heard about them a few months back. Secondly, I was so proud of them because they're an example of the fact that if you're passionate about something, you can keep doing it and getting better and improving, because you never know when your break's gonna come. And when that break comes, just be ready. In their case, people just jumped on that story because it was just absurd. These kids growing up in I know where they grew up because they literally live in the city I grew up in. Okay? So not only do I know where they grew up in, I know I don't want to go where they grew up in. So that's to tell you, that's the backside of the backside of somewhere. But my point being, if you're a creative here, you have an opportunity, and I hope this doesn't come off, because sometimes it does. I'm trying to phrase this just right.
Just say it, Aaron. I got you. It's all right.
You guys are living in the goddamn USA. Okay? I know things are bad. I know it's not as great as it could be. But at the end of the day, this is still America. People still have some degree of money to burn. People will still. I know guys who are making comic books right now. It costs them, I'm going to call it the Nigerian currency, forgive me, because I can't convert it in my head just real quick. But it costs them like $1,800 naira to make a comic book. But they're forced to sell it at 1,500 because they know that's the only way people will even, buy it. And they're coming up with innovative business models whereby their business model is sell it at a loss as a loss leader, and then get it out there. And then they have a free website. Like if you go to, I think it's thecomicrepublic.com, the comics are free. These are comics made by actual Nigerians, and they're making these stories. But the thing is, because of the challenge they're facing, they're putting it out there, and then they go to companies and then sell advertising space. That's their concept. So what I'm trying to get at is, there's so many ways to find your niche. There's a saying, the late great fella, Nicola Kuti, he did a song which was called Water, I'll just say it in a Nigerian way, Water no get enemy. What it means is water has no enemies. Water will find a way to get things done. So all of us need to be like water. And when I see people out here who have stuff, I want to buy your book. I want to read your book. I want to see what you're doing. And then on top of that, I want to, turn that into something positive. Tweet at me one day. I'll retweet you. I'll put your stuff out there to I don't have that many followers. I'm not famous. Forgive me. I got like 50 people following.
Not yet, Nara.
But I will
that's
put your
50
stuff
more
out.
people.
Right.
That didn't see that book. Seriously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I feel what you're saying, man, because I'm going to tell a little behind-the-scenes story. There was a panel last year. Someone tried to do something similar, but they came in a little negative about it and weren't very supportive, and it just didn't go as well. This has been magical. And so if you have the ability to make something, whatever you make, I don't care, do it. It doesn't take, technology's so good, it doesn't take much. And to your point, let's be real, if everyone's here, we have a little bit of, we're fortunate to be able to afford to come to this stuff, so we can do it. Questions, we got about 10 minutes left. Blonde hair, green hair wrap, right there, Charles, yes. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, cool, yeah.
Don't mind the giant camera in your face. I see you looking over.
This is my first convention I've ever been to.
Ooh. What?
And
How you doing so far? You having fun?
I love it. It's wonderful. This is the best thing I've done. But what I have been realizing a lot is that yesterday I cosplayed and I was Lust from Full Metal Alchemist. Oh. And yeah, it was pretty cool.
No idea what that is.
And I realized that when people would talk about my costume or what I'm wearing, it was black people who were recognizing who I was. And so it's that privilege of white people not just white people, non-black people don't really think about these characters in a different skin color. They don't have to, And so they didn't really recognize who I was, but every black person was like, oh, like you're Les, like, oh, that's so cool, you know? And so in a way, like, it's frustrating, but also in a way it's kind of like awesome, because it's like the fact that like black people can see what I'm doing and they can see it in like on a different person is like very cool. And I feel like within this like community of like being like a nerd, it's kind of like, it's different for black women, I'd say, because like I feel like there's less like black women who are within this community. But like what is a way to like change that, I'd say? Yeah.
I think by wearing your costumes and coming to these conventions and dressing up and coming to these panels. And now I love drag. This is my 10th year at Dragon Con. I think it's one of the greatest places on earth, because generally speaking, the nerd community is pretty accepting, but it still doesn't mean there's enough representation. So I think you're doing it. When you wear that and then someone comes up to you and you're positive and you talk about it and you share it, I think you're doing that. What do you guys think?
Definitely keep doing what you're doing, but also encourage others who might be more nervous to do it with you. This is my first time at a convention doing like my own kind of cosplay, really, and I never would have done that at the beginning of, you know, the Coco Chronicles and what we're doing, but because people encouraged me and, you know, they said they wanted to see things and I wanted to do it, I did it. So the way to see more of it is do it, encourage others to do it. You know, some people just need the support and the push or the inspiration to do it.
The support, yes, the support.
You know, it's really interesting that you say that you bring that up, because ironically, some of my exposures to cosplay online have actually been people of color. You know, from that cutie pie. Thank you, cutie pie sensei. You know,
get it right,
like,
no,
I'm sorry, I follow her already, so I'm good. But the point being, you know, you'll find out that it is a growing community. There's more and more people doing this, and I'd recommend, you know, just encourage each other. Reach out to others who are doing this. Encourage friends to join you. You know, if you're gonna go, grab a friend. Let's do this together, and then you'll be surprised what could come of that. And then besides that, there's also the little side, you know, thing that tends to happen, which is, you know, as you put yourself out there, and I do agree, it's true that sometimes people of other colors and races and histories and backgrounds may not recognize you in the context of your cosplay, but sometimes that's more a reflection on them. But you can still, wherever possible, spark the conversations. You know, reach out. Hey, you're doing this. I'm doing from the exact same cosplay. That's beautiful. Encourage, and then make those connections. Network. You know, sometimes it's like any business. Some things you got to just step up and step out there and put yourself out there and actually introduce yourself and get to know other people who do what you do, who aren't from your background, and then reach out across that divide and build those friendships. And you'll be surprised where that goes. You really would. Okay.
Question with the box.
I'm just going to, I guess, speak as an elder, if I may. As the young lady who said she was 45, there's a 5 in there for me, but I won't tell you which digit, but you can probably guess. I just want to thank you all, literally, from my heart. My husband and I, my husband's also African American. We have 2 sons. One is 25, one is 17, soon to be 18. And it was some years back in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I'm going to say around 2010, something like that. I walked in to pick up my son, our oldest, that time, you know, in high school, well, younger than high school, our oldest, from a con, and my husband goes, "They got you." Because I just fell in love. I looked around. I've loved art. I'm a scientist. I'm an electrical engineer. I've got a doctorate in this stuff. As I tell our kids, we got more degrees than a thermometer. Somebody needs to make some money. My husband, was biology, pre-med, worked as an OBGYN for many years. Never got sued, thank God, but also later got a law degree, so he's an MD, JD, and now he's a professor. The oldest went on to get his bachelor's and master's in computer science, and the youngest is saying he wants to do mechanical engineering. Now, that does not mean we have any money, because I work for LSU. I mean, I'm a state employee. I'm a professor. Duke for many years and now LSU. And I tell you all that not to say, oh, look at us, we do all this stuff, but to simply say, I thank you all for bringing this to the fore, in the sense that certainly my generation's growing up, you know, nerd was not a popular or good word, But I've always been happily a nerd. I came up with Star Trek, the original, and, proud of it. And, I just thank my mother and my sister for making sure that my clothes match. That was fine. I know how to, fix up when I need to, but I'm so glad here I can just be me. But I would thank you particularly and say and appreciate how you all, and that's everybody in the con, but here as well, welcome everyone. In other words, parents, right? And there's people my age, I'm not yet, but I know those who are grandparents. And y'all were so welcoming, because I started going to the cons. Our oldest, we brought him to see Georgia Tech in, I think, 2011. He says, oh, Mom and Dad, guess what's going on down the street? What? And then that's how we learned, like, really? We were coming to see Georgia Tech? But okay. So we went to Dragon Con. And fast forwarding in the years, not only have we been coming ever since, but as you all mentioned, the young lady in the front, how she thought about having a panel. I started attending panels, and I attended the one on women in science, right? Because that's my thing. And I noticed that the panel was kind of homogenous, right? In terms of there were no women of color on it. And so I politely, if you will, pointed that out in the questioning. And long story short, from that time till now, I've been on that panel. It was on Friday. And I don't know, I did not ask them to do it, but the moderator or the people who run the session changed the panel this year to women and minorities in STEM. And on top of that, the host at one point said, because my dear friend who's also an African-American woman, she's a biochemist, and she's like, why am I not on the panel? She had been the maid of honor in our wedding over 30 years ago. And so the host of the panel said, who thinks they should be on the panel? In addition to those of us who were there. And my friend raised her hand, and other people raised their hand, and a brother raised his hand. And so that panel that was women in STEM, that was quite frankly, all white, went to women and minorities in STEM. And on Friday, I think there was one Caucasian, one Asian American, and I think the rest, and another Caucasian lady, and the rest were African American. So I don't know if I'm like trying to take over the panel, but the bottom line is thank y'all for educating, if you will, the elders. And because the first anime I saw was Fooly Cooley, and I was like, well, okay, I don't know why there's a horn and a big old iron in there, but I'll learn. So I just want to say from my heart, I appreciate y'all. I'm if I may say so, I'm so proud of y'all. And last but not least, if you think there's a panel or things going on you're interested in, even if you can't start one, you can talk to the panelists and the host, and you may end up on it. Because today, my two nieces and my daughter-in-law ran the Sims Ethics and Sims panel. They were on that. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you loved it. And there were 3 African-American women. So anyway, we're doing it, y'all, and thank you for helping people like me to learn more.
Unfortunately, that will be our last question.
Let me say something real quick off of that. So as Tony's pointed out, I am the director of this track, and to her point, that's exactly how this stuff happens.
She took the words out of my mouth.
This is coming up. It'll come up. There's a link here for the Discord. That's how you can connect, at least with Digital Media Track. Because that's one of the things I'm trying to do. Everybody, yes, it's the Discord here, the tiny.cc, Digital Media Discord, all lowercase. You can jump in. We started that last year, and that's how many people have gotten on panels that didn't know how to submit before. So become a part of the conversation so we can build out more of what you want to see, but also what you want to be a part of. Go ahead, Tony.
Digital Media Track, is in nature open to a lot of things, but this isn't the only track at Dragon Con. There's science, there's costuming, whatever you're into, get out there, represent, meet the directors, find out what you can do to participate. And like I said, I'd keep hammering home, that's exactly what Marrista did. She said, I want to do this panel. And she wrote Charles, and I got to give credit to Charles. He and I are personal friends. We talk offline. This isn't his world. He doesn't know. All right, a little bit. But he doesn't know, he's not a blurred, but he has told me, hey man, whatever people bring, let's do it. Let's make it happen. And so when you bring those ideas, I can speak for him personally. He's open to hearing them all. They're not all going to make it, but I would rather there be too many and we got to cut down than, all right, well, we got a couple. We're going to make them happen. We are running short, so let's run through. Our time's up. We'll be all right. I run this thing. Please, Nuru, tell them where they can find you, what shows you're on.
You can find me on, my friends and I do a live Twitch stream every so often, but it's called The Nerds from Work. And if you just look it up on social media, it's called The Nerds From Work on Instagram, Twitter, and all of that. But if you're looking for me in terms of the stuff I do is African related, you look for Niger Nerds. That's plural, The Niger Nerds. Also, you can find me personally at The Niger Nerd, no S. Niger happens to be a nickname for the country, Nigeria. In case you didn't know, just want to let you know. But you can find me there. I'd be happy to continue a conversation with anybody who reaches out, and let's do this.
Thank you guys for coming. My name's Tony P. Henderson.
Hold on.
I'm not done.
I was about to say.
Girl,
Rude.
you the last one.
Oh.
You
like the most important
Thank you guys
person
for
here.
coming. My name's Tony P. Henderson. You can find me at tonyphenderson.com. Before I turn it over and we give the last round of applause, I want to thank you guys for coming.
Yeah.
Because
Yes, yes.
3 of us sitting up here ain't nothing. You guys came out. There was another Black journalism panel. You guys came out. You supported this. So seriously, you made this happen. Thank you so much. And last but not least, the
That was the
person
nerves coming out.
who said, let's make this panel happen. Marrista, tell us a little bit where they can find you.
If you go on to Instagram, Cocoa Chronicles, COCOA, like cocoa butter, you can find us. You can find our link tree to all of our links to our YouTube channel, our Facebook, and like I said, we're planning on starting up our podcast again.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Marrista, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Guys, hang out, chit chat. We got room out front.
Can
Don't
I
run
get a
off.
picture of the room?
Let's get some pictures. Authors, creators, give out your cards. Oh, thank you. Rate the panel in the app. That is important. Leave comments. If there's stuff you like, let us know. If there's stuff you didn't like, that's all right. Let us know. We want to do what you guys want us to do. So let's take some pictures. Let's give out some cards. Thank you again. Marrista, thank you so much.